Hello, today's Bible study comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 25 through 30, and it reads as follows. Eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whether it is put before you without raising question of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I am referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. For why is my freedom being judged by another's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of something I thank God for? Whoa, it's a lot. Paul starts off and he's telling them, excuse me, eat whatever is sold in the meat market. And, Paul had been telling them about eating from altars that are um, given to idol gods or to idolatry. Um, and he told them, that would be a type of worship with demons. But here he says, eat whatever is sold in the meat market. Um, and he's really saying is, hey, this isn't being a fellowship at the temple. It's not a sacrifice to a pagan god, which he's been telling them stay away from that. He said the food isn't the problem. So he says, even here, it's not the food itself that's the problem. It's the fellowship with this demon, this pagan temple. So right here, they're not at a pagan temple. They're not acknowledging that this is a sacrifice to another quote unquote God. Um, so in short, if it was sold at a meat market, there was no religious connection to it because it truly hadn't been processed or um, given a status of what it was yet. But if it was at the altar, then it had been given a status and it had been considered communion with that quote unquote God idol. So you could eat this meat and it was not a problem. Now, he also says that you could eat this meat even if it had been sacrificed to an idol at a private table, because the sacrifice no longer had um, what's a good word for it? Religious connection, religious character when it was sold at the meat market. It was no longer, as I said, being benefited for a religious situation. It was just meat being sold. There was no connection. There was no communion with those idols. So, and this is told to these Corinthians who had this consciousness about the idol, and they were weak. Don't get me wrong, um, but Paul was really saying, "Hey, this is what it is," and if it was defiled, they were not to eat it. And he pretty much said, "Look, man, don't even ask me if it's been defiled. Don't eat it. Don't commune with it. Don't give honor to something that is not the Lord." So, um, now they were a little bothered with this because they were bothered that they were like, hold on, man, because this meat was sacrificed to an idol. But Paul tells them, and I love how he does it because he goes back to the Old Testament, which is probably their New Testament this time. The earth is the Lord's and all its fullness. So that meat, whatever it may have been, whatever kind it may have been, it belonged to the Lord. And wherever it may be, it belongs to the Lord. The food here, look, y'all, is not the problem. The fact that you like worshiping idols and putting food out to idols and then communing with these idols and eating the food is the problem. The food has never been the problem. It is what you have given to guide this food with. If you were worshiping Baal or whomever it may be and you put this food on the altar, the problem wasn't the food, it was the offering to Baal. And now that you're using the food to commune with Baal, it has been infected. And I say infected, but that's how I feel about it. It's been infected with bad thoughts, bad ways, giving homage, edifying another God. So it's been infected with the wrong intentions. And if those who do not believe invite you to dinner, you can eat what is set before you. He says that. And even if they invite you to dinner, you don't get to discuss what they place in front of you. Um, and Paul is telling you, hey, don't you can socialize with non-Christians, but don't go to the pagan temple with them. And if you're socializing with them, hopefully and prayerfully, you are lifting up the Lord or talking about the Lord or just showing them who God is through you and your actions and your words. You can fellowship with them. That's how we go out and make disciples. They weren't disciples beforehand. We have to go out to them. So Paul even stays in line with what Jesus said. But he does say don't go to the pagan temples and worship with them, though, or eat with them. But if anyone says to you, this was offered to idols, do not eat it. Paul is giving you another warning and telling you it is not the food again, but the use of the food. If it was offered to idols, don't eat it. If you see that you have heard or they have told you that this has been offered, Paul is warning you not to eat the food. It is wrong for us to commune with false idols and have idol worship. And we shouldn't take anything that is sacrificed to idols. So don't eat it, and not for your conscience, but so they, the one that offers it to you, can see, hey, we don't do this. That's not our God. So their conscience, for their conscience. But if I partake with thanks, okay, now you're saying if I can eat it with no problem in my mind, and if I don't offend anybody else, why am I evil spoken of? Once again, the food is not the problem. The food is not the problem. But we can't judge another Christian either who eats meat sacrificed to idols, as long as there's some catches here. You can't violate your conscience, and you probably will violate it if you know it's been sacrificed to an idol. You'll probably say, I can't partake in this. And you can't do it to someone else. You can't be a stumbling stone for someone else, is what it's saying. You know, he is telling you to make sure that with your liberty, one, understand who is first. Two, the food is not the problem. Three, don't be a stumbling block for anybody. And four, Make sure that all this is done with love. I do not want to be a stumbling block for somebody else. And Paul is saying, don't be that also. Amen.